Hi, folks. Thanks for watching. I wanted to give you a little precursor to an interview I just did, and we did it with Calvin Waite, the Chief Investment Officer for Humbl. We were going through the conversation, and about halfway through, I decided and said, Calvin, we really need to do two interviews here because one is for the audience where we're talking about all the new things they haven't heard of before, the cryptocurrencies, the digital wallets, and ETXs. And then the other interview that we're going to have the audience also made up of people who are Humbl investors and want to hear more about Humbl and that kind of a slant. So Calvin agreed to do two different interviews. We just broke them in half, and I just wanted to let you know that that's what you'll be getting. So today, the 14th of October, I will actually release the one we taped secondly, which is a little bit more focused on the Humbl aspect, although it certainly goes through the whole digital currency. And then I think tomorrow I'll put out the second part, which actually we taped first, where we were going into the whole aspect and trying to educate people as far as what what are these things, what's the digital currencies, and how are they traded in ETXs. So there's going to be some overlap, but I hope you appreciate both of them. And with that, I'll introduce you to the first interview we did with Mr. Calvin Waite. Thanks for joining us again. We're going to be focusing more on Humbl and what you're doing as far as some of the block investments and all. Let me, for the audience, bring up, if you haven't seen it before, this is the Humbl website, one page in the Humbl website that Calvin manages here. And Calvin, we have here blocks, index products. We got block 3, 5, and 10. The next is thematic products, government, platform, and global experience. And folks, I'll point out in the blue boxes below at the bottom of each of these blocks, you can see their phenomenal rates of return over 3 months, 6 months, or a year. And then we have active products. So Calvin, if we can you run us through some of these, and so that we can kind of get an idea on what is it that, let's say block 3, 5, and 10, these are the index products. What is it that is going on here, would you say?
So the block 3, 5, and 10 are a selection of 3, 5, or 10 crypto assets that make up essentially an exchange traded index. So it's called an ETX, and it's a basket of crypto assets that we package together, and we do active rebalancing. So in other words, let's just take block 5 for an example. The block 5 represents 5 different coins, and we have a target allocation. So of these 5, we want to have 35% Bitcoin, 25% Ethereum, and then down the list. And if it just so happens that these target percentages get pretty out of whack, say Bitcoin drops, but Ethereum runs up really good, then it'll trigger a threshold eventually that will cause a rebalance. And what we'll be doing is we'll be selling some of that Ethereum and putting it back into Bitcoin, so that everything those target allocations are respected. Over time, as crypto is an extremely volatile world, there are some coins that will launch up with no reason whatsoever. So by taking advantage of this volatility, the person that owns the ETX or has subscribed to it will benefit from those abnormalities, and over time increase their holdings. So that's kind of the idea behind these. Block 3, 5, and 10 just represent a group of coins that we've selected.
Are they balanced differently, the different blocks? Is that the primary difference?
They're balanced using the same technology. With more coins, there can be a higher chance that one of these coins will go have a volatility event. So with the block 3, chances are, it would take one of those 3 to move a decent amount to throw the allocation really far off. But where you've got a block 10, where some of these coins only represent 5% of the ETX, if the coin moves up a significant amount, suddenly your target allocation could be, drastically different. So the block 10s usually rebalance more frequently than the block 3s, if that helps answer that question.
Yeah, and then on the what are the thematic blocks? How do they differ?
Yeah, so the thematic blocks are what you would kind of think of as a sector in the stock world. So it's a selected group of crypto assets that have the same theme. And so these would rebalance the exact same way. And the target allocations we've just selected by hand based on the attributes of the underlying assets themselves. Usually the larger cap, they're a little bit more stable and more secure, so they would have a higher percentage. And we kind of go through, we've sort of scientifically gone through and selected the coins that will go in each of these ETXs, and then set their target allocations.
And
so
go ahead.
Blocks and thematic are essentially an exposure to these. It just gives you an instant exposure to a basket of assets. The active products are a little bit different. The active products they actually use a specific strategy that we're actually choosing a side. So for example, the block oscillators, it is looking for oscillations in the market itself, and if the oscillations are showing that, hey, there's strength behind a move, then we take a long position. And if that move weakens or diminishes, then we'll exit that position, and we'll move from a buy and hold to a sell and wait kind of strategy. But these block oscillators, you can actually choose which assets to put in there. You can choose to use the oscillators AI to trade the block 3, the block 5, or the block 10. So each coin can kind of have its own rhythm and its own sort of ups and downs. And the more exposure you have to more coins, then generally, hopefully that gives you a better exposure, a better return overall. That's the goal.
If someone wants to invest in the blocks, I can readily understand where they might, because it's new, they think it's confusing how to get started. How do they get started, number one? And number two, is there a minimum amount that they need to invest to go in there? And I suppose the third thing is, do they have to keep their money in there for a set amount of time, or can they move it in and out and of the blocks?
Yeah, so I'll answer your questions backwards. Yes, you can buy and sell at any time. You don't have to leave your money in for any prolonged period of time. So generally you'll want to keep it in for longer though, because since I was the person that created these bots, the strategy behind them is much more long-term. That's how I do my personal trading. I like to look for long-term movements and take advantage of the longer trend. Sometimes you'll be, especially for these the actively traded ETXs, you'll notice that sometimes you'll be in a buy position for 3 to 6 months. Sometimes it's in and out a little faster depending on how choppy the markets get, but generally it's a longer term is what we're kind of interested in. As far as how to get involved, on the ETX page, there's a little bit of a tutorial, and I've actually created a video or two on how to get this set up. So you can essentially go through and kind of follow the steps. To just kind of give you a gist, you'll need to select an exchange. Right now we are using Bittrex, Coinbase, and Binance US. And so you have to open an account there, and it's just like opening a brokerage account anywhere. But once you're set up, then all you have to do is go to Humbl and subscribe to one of these ETXs, and then we'll ask you for your trade API keys, and we have video tutorials of where to get those. You copy and paste those in, and then it just runs itself.
And when one invests in this, how does Humbl make money off the investment? What is the fee?
So currently we're charging a flat fee of $4.99 per month, but I've had quite a few conversations trying to see if that number can be increased a little bit, since the benefit and the returns that these are capable of are certainly could give you more than a $5 a month benefit.
Well, and we can see, okay. So right now, and subject to change, it's about $5 a month for an investor. And I'm sorry if you said it, maybe I missed it. Is there a minimum amount they have to put in to begin with?
So the minimum is based on the exchange itself. I think
that being Binance okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Binance allows you to trade a smaller amount, and so for example, in a block 3, 25% is the smallest allocation. So on Binance, if you're trying to trade 25% of your total fund, that could be $25. That could be could be a pretty small amount. So your total that you would need to invest in something like that may be $100 or somewhere in there. But for an exchange like Coinbase, where the fees are a little bit higher and their minimums are higher, and then say you went to a block 10 where one of the allocations is a 5% representation. Well, we still need to be able to make that minimum trade on that 5%. So you're going to end up needing a lot more investment to get started on a block 10, so that we can still make that minimum trade at 5% allocation. So it's only driven by the exchange itself.
So that's good to know, because as you say, it's part of the exchange, or it also depends upon how much money you have, which block you might go into.
Yes.
Just to point out, in the blue boxes at the bottom of each block, you're getting these phenomenal returns, and everyone I've talked to who have invested are very happy with the returns they're getting. Have a couple things occur to me, and that would be one: do you, as having done this now, as I recall, the blocks were capable of being traded in the United States? What was it, around April, wasn't it, that I think somewhere in that time period? Yeah. Have you learned anything by doing this that you didn't know? Or, I mean, to what extent you go in with ideas and a game plan, and then we all learn by doing. One of my favorite sayings is ready, fire, aim. And, until you do something, you can't perfect it, right? Have you learned some things from what you've been doing on the block so far that maybe were kind of a surprise to you?
No, not at all.
Good.
In fact, I'll tell you why, is because I thoroughly backtested these. I went through years and years of backtesting, because the last thing you want to do is put somebody's assets or money up as an experiment. I'm not that kind of guy. I definitely have a plan for the things that I do, and the decisions that I make are very, very judicious, and I've gone through a process. So I have personally traded using bots for many, many years, and these are the strategies that I feel the most comfortable with. These are the types of strategies that I'd be like, okay, I could let my family invest in. And by the way, those returns aren't a product of me just being really smart, but it is a reflection on the crypto market itself. This past year in crypto has been absolutely phenomenal. So you can't think that these.
So would it be analogous to kind of say? would it be analogous to saying if I invested in a mutual fund, which personally I don't do that, but if I invest in a mutual fund and the overall market goes up, the mutual fund would probably do well, and if the overall market goes down, the mutual fund would do less well. Is that analogous to what's happening on the blocks?
Yeah, that's generally what's happening, because the indexes and the thematics are giving you exposure to a basket of crypto. If that basket is doing terribly, then those returns are going to come down pretty good. The longer term horizon, the better off you are, though. Crypto has generally gone in these 4-year cycles, and so if your investment horizon is 4 years or 10 years or something like that, you're going to be probably pretty happy with these products. If your investment horizon is 15 minutes or 3 months or something like that, you're going to scare yourself out, and you'll probably sell at the high buy at the high and sell at the low. That's just human nature when it comes to markets. The only exception to that is the actives. The actives are actually trying to take advantage of ups and downs, and they choose a side. So generally, that one, it is still a longer term strategy, but hopefully when the market goes down, you've exited into Bitcoin, or you're in something a little bit stronger, and when the market moves back up, you're going to be taking advantage of that. You'll notice that the actives are down a little bit lately, and it's because Bitcoin is on the run and the altcoins are underperforming against Bitcoin. So let me
bring that in here. Yeah, I mean, just to point out for people, you can see it's 118% for the year on the block oscillators, but we got 17% for 3 months and 16% it looks like for the 6 month. So
these returns are a little lower because the alt market is dropping a little bit while Bitcoin's running lately. As Bitcoin levels off, or as the alts find their own bottom, then these numbers will skyrocket. It's kind of interesting because people think, oh, I should invest in the one that's made 9,000%. But oftentimes, buying the one that has done the very, very best, it might have the runway ran out. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You're almost better off looking for one that hasn't performed super well recently, because that's the one that just might get going. So I'm not trying to tell people what to do, but I see this kind of mistake happen where people think, oh, this one, and this could be in the stock world as well. Like, oh, I'm going to go and invest in a company that has made this giant return. Well, sometimes that giant return represents their entire bull run, and the bear market's just right around the corner. So you kind of have to be smart about that too.
Exactly, and that's what I was going to say, that this is, I think, analogous to people going out and chasing returns instead of anticipating. And, that can be a dangerous way to do it. They get the magazine, that's writing about the stock market, the top 5 mutual funds for 2019, and people put money in there. Well, then, the world changes, and all of a sudden your money didn't do as well because you were jumping in at the wrong time and the wrong item. Are there shorts? There's shorts in the stock market. Are there shorts in this world, or not yet?
I have not programmed any shorting into these bots, and the reason is because it's already too volatile. When you have something slower moving, like Bitcoin is probably the most mature market of all the crypto,
mm-hmm.
and there I probably could do a short, but the returns are already so crazy just based on volatility alone that you just don't need to go out and seek for more volatility. The problem is these can double. I've seen cryptos that have gone up hundreds of % in a single day. Like, look at Dogecoin in the last 6 months or something. It was almost overnight that it went up 600%. And imagine being in a short position and suddenly you wake up and you're buried underwater by six times your initial investment. It's just
I
It's
was
not
going to say,
smart.
I haven't even heard of Dogecoin recently. I don't know how that's doing. But what's interesting relative to the ETX and the blocks is that for people, they hear about Bitcoin and these other coins maybe being expensive. I think Ethereum is in the area of what, $3,300 or somewhere in that neighborhood, or and they go, oh my gosh, I don't have that kind of money. But this is a way they can go in with a lot less money and yet participate in this marketplace. And here, as I just want to point out in the upper right here, as you mentioned, you have tutorials. So if people want to kind of look, they can click on this. I won't play that video right here, but you have the step 1, step 2, step 3. So there is a process here that people can go onto humblepay.com and go through and kind of learn, what's what and how to do this, which I think is, great. I've heard some people say it's a little daunting for them, a little hard to understand. I don't know if you've heard that, but to the extent that it might be somewhat confusing, are there any changes that might be anticipated to make it maybe a little more user-friendly?
Yeah, we have on our roadmap, we're trying to make this essentially a one-click solution. What we're trying to do is eventually be really nice to be able to load your Humbl app with whatever money you want, and then select a portion of that and say, okay, I want to buy an ETX with this amount. It would make it way more approachable, but there are some hurdles. There's some regulatory hurdles and things that we're still working through to make that possible. But that is the goal. We're trying to make it much easier. If we were to have an exchange in-house or something like that, it would make things a little bit easier. We've come up with quite a few ideas of partnering with certain exchanges or different things to try to get there. But we'll kind of get there as we can. Most recently, though, we are developing some improvements and some charting and getting actives out on Coinbase and Binance. So we've got a lot under development right now. So just stay tuned to the major Humbl social media channels, and you'll know what's going on there.
I wanted to ask you just a couple of questions because I think the audience might want maybe a little bit more of a personal thing, or the atmosphere of working for Humbl and all. But is there anything that before we kind of jump to a slightly different topic, and I won't keep you much longer. We can hear your son in the background, and it's the great new world. I just interviewed someone else whose son actually jumped on his lap there in the interview. But the thing I was going, is he there?
Yeah.
That's fine if he's there. Okay. We all saw the cute video of the guy on the national news where his son walks in behind him. That was funny. Went viral.
That's my life. I can't get away from my children. Sorry.
But basically, no. I mean, this is the new world, right? We can work from home. But the thing is, you're content with how it's going, right? I mean, so far, and more or less. I mean, on your level of contentment from what you've accomplished, where would you be with 10 being totally satisfied?
Well, I'm very happy with the products that we currently have, and I have no intention of changing those. But I do have more products that I have come up with that I really want to get introduced out there in the world. The cool thing about crypto is that there's less regulatory. And if you were to go out and do a market making bot in the stock world, you just couldn't do it because you would have all these regulations of, hey, you can't have an open buy and an open sell at the same time. You have to have permission to be a market maker and different things. But liquidity pools in crypto are very common, and the average person can create a liquidity pool and do a market making bot. And I have some ideas for how to create an infinite market making bot for any number of assets. So I've got some really cool ideas that the returns are a little bit lower but they're a little safer returns, which is probably a pretty sweet off balance for a segment of the people that are interested in these ETXs.
Something I meant to ask too. I cover government, and we have pensions, we have CalPERS, the pension plan for California, we have the state of Illinois. Every state has its pension plans. There are billions and billions of dollars sitting in there. Does Humbl look to reach out at some point? And if I ask you something you can't answer, then don't answer it. But is Humbl as a company, right now you're dealing, I guess, with individual investors, just as I might come in. But do you see this evolving to where you could offer products to the huge money, the pension funds, and maybe say, hey, we can perhaps give you a much greater rate of return, at least not for all of their money, but for a portion of it?
So everything's on the table, right?
Okay.
Humbl, you can pretty much take it to the bank that we're thinking through everything. In fact, we feel like even our own internal investment 401k plans, different things, should be ETXs. We just feel like it's a new way forward, and I think there's a lot of money out there that could benefit from exposure to crypto. So everything's on the table. Once we're more mature in our space and worked through some more of the bugs and different things. Right now, it's a little challenging because you can't ask a pension fund to open an account on Coinbase and then we'll rebalance their assets for them or something like that.
So theoretically,
we've got a ways to go.
Theoretically, it might be something that would evolve. And I know, when the state of Illinois and a lot of these states are woefully underfunded, and if they got a higher rate of return, it would help. Certainly be not necessarily the one solution, but would add to getting those pension funds funded to where they were more in balance. And one of the problems in government, I know, is that because they are, so cautious with the public funds that they don't invest in almost anything that would actually give them a decent rate of return. So I would say from my own standpoint and perspective, in fact, I wrote my master's thesis on the coming collapse of publicly funded pensions, that it is another flaw in the marketplace, you might say, in that particular realm. So this is fascinating for those who might be in government and watch this interview, that, this might be something interesting down the road. Now, that said, before we close out, You've been investing for how long? You got your finance degree. There's a lot of people with MBAs, but I don't know if they have anything about currency. Were you like a dual major in this process? Because I don't know of anyone else like you. Are there other people like you who even understand this stuff?
I know, I'm a little unusual. You've got that going for you. So when my undergrad was, I did international finance, and I kind of got my start in trading in the foreign exchange markets. And so the foreign exchange markets is a really nice segue into crypto trading, because you have, when your brain's thinking of, yen versus euro, and you've got pounds versus, the dollar, and then everything's all upside down and back and forth. It helps when you're thinking, okay, how many Bitcoin is this Ethereum, or how much Ethereum is this ADA, and so it helps your mind kind of wrap itself around those things. But I've always been fascinated by the group philosophy, and there is a lot of manipulation in all markets, but you can let that manipulation work against you, or you can let it work for you, and usually it's the patient hand that benefits the most from people messing around with prices and psychology in the market. So I've traded for probably a couple of decades now, and I've done really well over the years, and especially creating bots where I don't have to do much work. My bots, they decide whether to buy or sell once per day, and that gives me a little bit of free time, and I can kind of do a lot of things that I like to do. But every market is very, it's very similar. I could use my same ideas and probably do something on the stock market or any other market, and it would probably be just as good. The advantage of crypto is that it's just pure raw emotion, which means that the market's moving faster. You have
When you say
I like
it's
to tell people
pure raw emotion, do you mean the value of it is based on raw emotion?
just that the speed at which people make decisions is much faster because of the emotionality in the market. I like to tell people that a year in crypto is about a decade in the regular stock market, because in the stock market, you've got to be more patient. You have to wait for things
Right.
to evolve. You have to wait for that next quarterly report. In the crypto world, boy, hey, we're adding NFTs to this. We've just added smart contracts to this chain. Oh, hey, we just invented DeFi. We like, there's so many things going on. The technology is going so fast, and new things are coming out all the time. You seriously cannot keep up with everything. But because of that, people start chasing their tails around, and people can really get themselves into a thing where they're like, oh, I'm not in on the newest, latest, greatest. I should be selling this and buying that. Oh, now it's crashing. I need to be in on the new thing. And people can just really wreck themselves really fast. And so my approach is a much more kind of measured and patient approach. And it's interesting how well you can do when you stop running around like a chicken with your head cut off and start relaxing and saying, trends have to play their course. Nothing goes up forever, nothing goes down forever. And so when you make a kind of a measured decision when the market's doing a certain thing, you can be patient and wait for it to do something else. And over time, as long as you don't get too emotionally in and out of every position you take, you'll do pretty well. So I'm trying to help people slow down and kind of save them from themselves in a certain way.
Before we close out, so Brian Foote is the CEO and I would say founder of Humbl. How did he find you? Because it seems to me you would be, as I've said before. So did Brian already have this idea that he wanted to have ETXs, or did you and him meet up somehow and you brought the idea to him, or how did that evolve?
So we met at a cryptocurrency conference back in 2018, and he just mentioned, hey, I'd really love to create a block 30, like a 30 coins where people can just get exposure to 30 coins immediately. So it was sort of his idea as far as creating a basket of coins. Well, I was working with a different company that I ended up closing, and then I started going back to my roots of trading and what I was really good at. And this whole time I've been creating bots and different things. And I was actually trying to create subscription-based bots that people could use. And I was working through the process of making that happen. And then I realized that if anything went wrong, I'd probably be in trouble because it's just me, you know what I mean? So I decided to get back in touch with Brian and some of the upper management there, and I said, hey, you know what? We had a conversation way back in 2018 about these different, ETX type of products. I've created these bots and I've back tested a whole bunch of things, and I think I could allow somebody to subscribe to this. And I was kind of telling him that I, like, at the time, I think I had 100 different coins trading with bots, just 24 hours a day. And I was like, I could make it pretty easy for the average person to get exposure to a whole basket of different coins. And I bet we could do something here. And Brian was like, he was just all for it. He was just like, let's do it. So we immediately got in touch, and I took some of my developers that I had worked with in my prior company, and we've just been trying to make it user-friendly and kind of work all that out. But when Humbl started, our products were the first ones to launch because we had already done a lot of that groundwork and had a lot of that all in place. Now the challenge is the volume, because we have a fair number of trades that are happening all the time, and so we're working through. There hasn't been a ton of new news and developments coming out on ETXs because we've been kind of working through scaling and things like that. So
when you have those trades, and again, this is so fascinating, this whole new world. I mean, it's when you have all these trades going on, is that something that's automatically, I mean, it's written into the code to where you don't have to manually do it? Like I, as a personal investor, would have to manually do my trade and go onto a Schwab or an Ameritrade or whatever the case is. But is this happening automatically so that it doesn't involve you pushing a button?
Yeah. So in other words, where this began is I have a server that's just in the cloud that runs 24 hours a day, and all the while I'm getting feeds, price feeds that flow in, and then I'm taking the end of day data or whatever period I want, and I essentially wrote the code to say I want these averages. I want, I took some of the technical indicators and different things and just converted those close dates and did the calculations to say, okay, the RSI is this, and this is, whatever the other indicators are, and just creating those numbers. And then you simply just basically say, okay, at end of day, I want to, if this number is above this threshold, and if this number is greater than that number, or whatever, just the if then else statement. If your logic is met, then it'll place a buy order, and if the logic is met for a sell, then it will sell. So my stuff is it's all automated. I can go on vacation and do things, and it just runs itself. I don't have to sit and babysit it or anything. But
that's good, because I was thinking,
a nerd.
This is a 24, as you just said, this is a 24 hours a day marketplace, right? 7 days, it never stops. Yeah. And then the other thing is, a lot of people still haven't heard about Humbl, and they haven't heard of ETXs. So I don't know how many. I'm not really asking. Maybe we'll get it in the third quarter earnings or future earnings from Humbl as far as how the sales are going. However, as people learn about this through interviews like this, hopefully, and the process of you getting more subscribers, I can see where a lot of people would want to participate because they don't want to go out and buy Bitcoin on their own, but this way they can participate in that marketplace for a lot less money and be diversified. So it's kind of a, I'll say it for a layman, a mutual fund of digital currencies, you might say. Does it matter if you go from having, I'll make numbers up, 10,000 subscribers to having 1 million subscribers? Does that matter as far as the operation of the blocks?
So it can. I mean, the challenge in any market is liquidity, right? And so we kind of have to select coins that have a pretty deep.
So they're not
base.
Thinly traded, basically.
Yes.
I mean, it's the same problem with the stock. There's a company I talked about the other day, and it only trades like 5,000 shares. So you can't go in and buy 50,000 if you wanted to. There's just not enough liquidity. So same kind of idea, I guess. Huh?
Yeah. So, but we're very judicious about it. We don't dump a ton of trades all at the same time. They're usually measured and separated by a number of seconds to minutes to keep from pushing markets around. And usually, from our experience, we haven't had much slippage in our current volumes, but that's also partly why we use some of the larger cap coins. They have a little bit better depth, and you can't move the market quite as much. So, but yeah, and also when we're doing regular rebalancing and things, usually we don't get a big shock where we have to liquidate a ton of coin all at once. You can, as we're rebalancing and keeping things in check, usually it's a smaller amount that we're moving around. So there are ways that we're trying to make sure that we're taking care of everybody and avoiding problems like that.
I'm sure after I hang up, I'll think about 30 other things I should have asked you, and then I'll hear about from our viewers, why didn't you ask him this? And I'll probably go, well, that would have been a good question, you know. So rather than keeping you until the good questions that I haven't asked occur to me, because we've kept you longer than I anticipated, and I appreciate your time. Let me close out just by asking, is there anything else that you would want to say that maybe we haven't touched on that you'd want to, mention to the audience?
Nothing really comes to mind. I just feel like it's a very exciting world, this crypto thing, and I think too many people have stayed on the sidelines. And I can't tell you how many people have said, I was introduced to Bitcoin back when it was $500 or $1,000 or $2,000, but I just never got in. And here we are at $57,000 Bitcoin, and you feel bad. And it's just kind of one of those things where you just want to help people get involved. They don't have to put their life savings in, and you don't have to be a scientist of some kind. You just need to get some, just a little bit. You got to get some exposure and just dip your toes in this world, because it's absolutely the future. It's going places, and if Humbl can help you get there, then my job is complete. Like, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. But even if you don't use Humbl, you should definitely get involved in some way. You just have to get involved you have to own a little Bitcoin. You have to know what it's like to have that in your portfolio, because the value is just phenomenal, and what it represents and what it is just unmatched by any asset out there. And so I'm trying to get all my friends and my realm of influence involved, and they don't have to do anything complicated. If you can buy a portion of a Bitcoin and just hang on to it, that's all you're trying to accomplish in the first place. It's nothing more difficult than that.
Yeah, I'll make the analogy. Number one, it's what I try to do with the channel, that I talk to people throughout my life. I've been investing. A lot of people my dad talked about investing. So for me, it was natural. Not everyone has a father or mother who ever invested. And so it's so foreign to them. And I'm saying, you don't want the only money you make in your life coming from a paycheck, because no matter how well you're paid, you're not going to really grow wealth that way in most instances, which is why so many times people get the idea you can't get ahead. You can get ahead, but we're never taught about money. We're never taught about investing. And so that's my motivation. Let's help the average person learn some of the ropes and how to invest to make money. So I know that's where you're coming from as well, as you just said. And I would also say to people, it's like anything. It's like learning to drive. You could read a book about driving, but it's not the same as driving. And so even if they put a little bit of money into this, they're going to learn by doing. They're going to become familiar with it. They're going to emotionally adapt to it. They'll watch it if they have money in, where they're not going to watch it if they don't. And by the way, on that, how do people know? Do you send out a statement, or how do they know how if I invested $5,000 in block 5, do I do the math myself, or how do I know how my account is doing?
Well, we create kind of a cost basis, and then give you a percentage from there. But one of the developments that we're working on, and I'm hoping to have it in the next couple of weeks, is a chart of your historical performance, so you can watch your value go up and down based on what you did. But yeah, to your point, I have to say, in all my years of kind of working for a company and doing all of that, I've had several days in the past year where I've made more in one day than I made the entire year working for a company. And I tell you, it's an amazing thing to have markets working for you and making your investments do something for you. It's kind of an amazing feeling. I could really go off on diversified incomes and how do you create security for your family and all these types of things. But really, it just comes down to you've got to get some exposure to different markets, and learning how to trade in the stock market is awesome. Learning how to have some crypto in your portfolio is awesome. You just need to get a little bit more educated and get involved, because the benefits are just enormous. when you get there.
You're one of the pioneers in this field, I think, and I said the same to Brian Foote when we were together in Nashville, and it's exciting for me to get to meet you guys and to secondhandly be able to talk to you and find out about this. I've invested for 40 years, but it's in the traditional way of the stock market. In the last year, it's like, your mind explodes. I had to learn what a SPAC is and what an ETX is and cryptocurrency. The world keeps changing, and this is what I would say to people: don't be afraid of it. You want to embrace it, because part of the fun of investing is the learning process about how the world is changing. And if you don't invest, you don't learn about that. Look what we're doing right at this moment. 20 years ago, when I started the channel that I have, the Illinois channel, I had to explain to people what the word video streaming meant. I had to explain what the word broadband meant. And now it's so accustomed to it. So I would say to people, to use that as an analogy, these things you're hearing about now that seem so foreign and complex, whether it's a crypto wallet or digital currencies, are the wave of the future. And it is something I would encourage you to participate in. Stick your toe in the water, ease into it. You don't have to go whole hog, but it is something where it's worth getting on board to at least experience it yourself, because that's really how you learn these things. Calvin, hopefully we could do this again. I promise I won't keep you as long as I've kept you today, but it would be fun as we go throughout the year to just touch base with you and get some updates from now and then. And I'm sure the people out there in Humbl Nation will appreciate all the time you gave us today, but also appreciate listening to you talk at some point in the future.
Yeah, well, it's fun to do. I'm kind of chatty once you get me on a subject, so I enjoy it as much as anyone.
Well, I'm glad you did, and we'll say goodbye, but thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.